Alright, hello. So, I kind of wanted to do a little experiment on making an image from my old techniques of editing to my new techniques of editing. I have the same files opened up here in Photoshop and Pixinsight, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit both the way I would before and after. For Photoshop, I'm going to use 0 plugins, and for Pixinsight, I'm going to use what I have available. So that means with Photoshop, I'm not going to be using Noise Exterminator. I'm not going to be using any of this. Everything that's in Photoshop will be used. That's already in Photoshop. I will say the only thing I have done to both these images is just a little bit of a star exterminator. Blur exterminator, just to make the stars match because I was a little bit out of focus for oxygen, very slightly. It made the stars just a little bit out of focus. I only changed it. Everything else is exactly the same. Okay, so other than that, let's get started. What I did was I did stack these in Pixinsight, and turn them into TIFFs from these .zip files that they started as. Now, usually when you'd go stack in Deep Sky Stacker, the images would not be aligned. However, for this, they are just already perfectly aligned. But you can actually see the process over here once I flip them on top of each other. So what I would do back then is I would turn on difference. You can already see it. Once you align these stars up, they perfectly fit. And that makes life just a little easier. So now we have our oxygen and our hydrogen. This is going to be a Who image. I already finished it. Actually, let me pull it up real quick. This was my finished result for my first try. This was edited in Pixinsight. Looks pretty alright. I'm going to add more onto this. I think I like these outer bands of oxygen, which we have picked up. So, let's get started. What I would usually first start doing is immediately using Control L to open up the levels, or the histogram, and then pulling it forward very slightly. Now, as you can see, it doesn't exactly like that, in case you pull it up too high. Don't want to be clipping anything. That's clipping just a little bit. Don't think that histogram is showing up exactly how I need it to be. Let's change it to an RGB image and see if that maybe fixes it a little bit. Nope. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here, but usually this would show up where the median is, but we're gonna have to just use our eyes, unfortunately. And I think that's a good stretch because we are gaining a little bit of black pixels, which we don't want. But overall, I think that's an okay stretch for hydrogen. Oh, there we go. Haven't used Photoshop in a minute. Editing. I mainly use Pixinsight now. Alright, there we go. Stretch just a little further. Let's make it 6. Okay. So there is our kind of stretched hydrogen and oxygen, which look pretty good. Now for processing, usually what I do is I use my the curves panel by pressing Control M, then just bringing down the curve just a little bit, and then bringing up the tones a little bit, just so I can get a brighter inside, but not. You don't want to clip it because that doesn't look good. So just raise it up a little bit. I like to keep my black point just above just so I can get a little bit of a gray background. I think that just adds to it a little bit. Now, one thing I did notice is that we do have a little bit of a vignette or a gradient in the background of our image. So, we have to fix that, because you may notice here, I can stretch the image just a little bit to show. This side of the image is brighter than this side, and that will create some weird background artifacts that we don't want in our final image. So what we can do is we can just copy this, create a new file. It'll create it off of a what our clipboard is. And there's our image. Now we can do some blurring. Where is it? There it is. Noise. Okay, so we do have to convert this into a 16-bit, which shouldn't matter because we already stretched out the image, so there's nothing else hiding in the background. Dust and scratches. You can turn it down a little bit. So basically, in this final step, what we have to do is we have to get rid of these bright blotches, which are, in fact, stars. And obviously, we need to get rid of this. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking a neutralized background. We kind of do what Pixinsight does automatically, but we're just doing it automatically. You can kind of use a heal brush. It can be pretty big, because you're just erasing this. I'm going to be a little careful with it, because we do have some things we need to watch out for. Now, you can spend your time doing this, taking as much time as you need. Usually what I would do here, though, is use Star Exterminator or Star Net, and then put that in, and then you can get rid of the stars, and then do it that way. But this should work fine. Okay, so that is, I think, our hydrogen. Yep. So we do have to turn this into a 16 bits per channel, just so we can apply the image. Apply image. Untitled -1, and we'll set it to subtract. What you'll notice is that the background, the darkness, and the lightness all kind of disappear. Now we don't want to set to 100% opacity. We can try to set it like 80, because that will get rid of most of it, not interfere with anything else. Now when we go to stretch, our background is leveled. You can do the same thing with oxygen. I'll speed this up for you. And there we go. So now both of our images have extracted backgrounds. It looks pretty alright. So now we can actually combine our images. Now we can take our oxygen, hide our layer, go into our red layer. We'll call, oh, I should have named this before, but this is our hydrogen layer, and this is our oxygen layer. And then we shove our oxygen into the green and blue to create a Who image. Who images are pretty great because it kind of reflects reality while still retaining good colors. So let's dial back the background a little bit. And there we go. Now it shouldn't be clipped, so we can still edit. It's already looking pretty good so far. Oh, look. So, there we go. We can just start by applying some curve stretches. And I do notice that the background is getting a little crazy there. So what we can do is we can create a color selection where it's selected. There it is. And we can do a color range. Let's do highlights. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm going to mask out the dumbbell. It'll select a few stars, but that's okay. What we can do then is we can feather, modify, feather. Let's do it by 4 pixels. There we go. Now what that can do for us is I think we can create a mask out of that. There we go. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. We're going to copy, control, delete the mask down here. So now we have this image on the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this image as the layer that will be a no touch, and then this layer that will be our touching layer. I know that sounds really weird, but what we're going to do basically is reduce the noise on one layer and not the other. We don't want the strength to be 10 because that kills our data a little bit. Don't want to reduce color noise because that gets rid of our star colors. So if you turn off preserve details, it just evaporates it. So let's turn it to 5. Let's try 5. That way we keep our detail on the inside, because as you can see, it softens up a little bit. And here, for one final adjustment, just want to show what this looks like before and after. Let's do a little bit more of a reduction here. Okay. That looks a little better. So now our background is changed, but then we still keep our details inside of here. Because you see, detail just gets lost. So you need to create a mask. So what I can do now is I can copy my image pressing Shift Control Alt E. And that will allow me to stretch our image a little bit more. I am going to lower our highlights. Then we can create our same mask as before. And then again, we just gotta feather it just a tiny bit. 4 pixels. And then we can create a curves. So I do want to tone down the green just a little bit. So we should basically just messing around with it, see what looks okay. I do see a little bit of green in the background there. Okay, that looks pretty alright. I am just gonna crop this. There we go. I do want to lower the highlights, so we're going to use camera raw filter. So I do want it to be kind of like an HDR effect. There we go. Raise the exposure up a little bit. We do have a lot of red stars, which I mean is realistic. That's just how the way it is. But yeah, I don't really like the way they look. I do want the interior to be bright though, because that's the way it is. Don't want to hide that glorious highlights of it. Don't want to clip the reds too much. Let's see, it won't look fantastic. I like that look. Alright, so it doesn't look like there's much green here. I can actually transform this green though into a purple. That looks like more what I would have wanted. I think, honestly, it looks pretty alright. I think it looks close to the one I got, actually. Yeah, just a little bit. Yep. So yeah, it's pretty close, except mine uses a different technique. Yeah, that's pretty close with Photoshop. So now that we got this with Photoshop, let's move over to Pixinsight. Let me just save this image real quick. Okay, so for Pixinsight, one thing to kind of just check out your data without destroying it is using an STF. But for Oxygen, you can already see the tendrils, which we did get in our Photoshop version a little bit, but it's not as pronounced because we didn't stretch as hard as Pixinsight would like us to. In Hydrogen, you can see a little bit too, which is something kind of interesting. Okay. So, like I said in the beginning of this, that I can use, well, I will be using add-ons that aren't just default in Pixinsight, as they are my new workflow. However, the last one was just whatever's in Photoshop. So, here we go. First thing I always like to do is a GHS. Actually, sorry, before that, we need to get rid of our background. So here we go. I'm using Adam Block's method of Star Exterminator, using Star Exterminator and dynamic background extraction, as I think that is the best. Set our tolerance to 2. Sample generation 17 and 10. Doesn't really matter. What we're going to do, I'm going to change the sample color just so I can easily see it to pink or purple. And then just move these away from M27 so that none of our detail gets lost. But then what this will do is it'll get rid of all of this. So we'll just add one more. Okay. Now we are going to make a process of this, which was me dragging this triangle and moving it up. That way, in case this doesn't work out, we can always retry. But I think it should go pretty alright. We'll add the stars back in 1 second using pixel math. O plus O stars. Press OK. Then just move the triangle over. Huzzah, you get stars back. And they're the same brightness, so you don't have to do any weird math trickery to get this right. Keep pixel math open. And then we can actually close out blur X because we don't need that. Now let's move over to hydrogen. Hydrogen isn't that bad, it's just that we do have a dark gradient down here, light gradients up here. So it's not the greatest image ever. Okay. So same thing as before, I think we can actually just grab this process. Oh, wrong one. What we can actually do is we can just grab this process, just move it over because it's pretty much the same image. It's just that in hydrogen is a little different because there's actually more sprouting out from this. So we do have to move it just a little further away. Now we can close our stars out. Now we have our corrected images. So now we can start stretching. I personally use generalized hyperbolic stretch because I think that is personally the best for stretching out my images. I prefer it than using like a histogram. Reason why is going to be very apparent here. So once I get to this point where the dumbbell is kind of brightened out, kind of overexposed, I drag the local intensity down, and then all of a sudden it becomes gray. It's pretty good. And then move the symmetry point again, stretch, see if you do it too much, you can actually start seeing the structure of the outer dumbbell, which I want to get for next time. But we're not here for that just yet. So let's stretch it to a good point where we can see the outer structure, but it's not overbearing with noise. See if it does become like that, we have to get rid of it. Then you just drag down protect highlights. And that kind of does what we did in Photoshop by dragging down the whites. I do have to make sure that this white part is still getting dragged down. Just a little bit. Alright, and that should be a good stretch. Still see that outer structure, but we can protect that with masks and stuff. We don't want to overstretch because that's bad. Let's do the same thing for oxygen. Turn off STF, send the symmetry point, then we can start stretching. Send it back a little bit. Local intensity. And symmetry point again. Now with this you can actually really see, we did get a little bit of background here, but that's okay. We'll live. It's not super visible. Then we can drag this down again. And I think we're ready to combine them. It's now that they're all stretched, we can just easily just channel combine them. I also like the way Pixinsight does channel combination, where you can just choose which goes in red. Which hydrogen will go to red, oxygen will go to green, and blue. There it is. To fix the improper white balance. I like to do it manually by just raising the red a little bit. And then just kind of fiddling around, it looks right about the same. So we can apply. Let's tone down our background there. Raise up our midtones. It's already looking a lot better than Photoshop. We haven't even done any noise cancellation yet. In comparison, so this is our Pixinsight image so far. And this was our Photoshop image. Already see that we're actually getting just slightly more detailed in Photoshop by just doing these slight enhancements. Now, I don't like just applying a noise X to everything because I think it drowns out a lot of this detail that I think is very important. So what I do is I use ACDNR. ACDNR instead of a range mask, which is kind of fiddly to work with. ACDNR is honestly pretty good as a lightness mask. Just apply that. Make sure their clone is selected. This is what it looks like. It's pretty sweet. Now we want to lower our highlights so to make sure that none of the bright parts of the inside are affected, but we don't want the background to be affected at all. And I think that looks good. Let's make the transition just a little smoother. There we go. To make just the transition just a little smoother, we don't have a feather option. However, what we do have is convolution. Where is it? There it is. Then we can set it to 2. Just drag it over. That kind of smooths everything out. So we're not doing anything crazy here. So we can apply this. Now it'll cancel out everything that's not the brightest part of the nebula, which is what we want. I know my space is getting a little cluttered and that might be bad for some people, but that's just the way it works. Now we can, not star exterminator, noise exterminator. Then we can just apply the image, or apply noise X. And look at that. So the outsides of our image are affected, but the inside is not. It does create a little bit of a stark contrast for noise, but then what we can do is we can apply a little bit of noise X a little later. This just helps protect the main parts of our image. So I don't want to affect the inside too much because it's pretty detailed. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to delete ACDNR. Yes, I get it. And we're actually going to do another star exterminator. And we're going to keep the stars out of the image for a little bit. Alright, so here's our stars. Goodbye stars for now. Actually, just close these two out, actually. So we don't need oxygen, hydrogen. Okay, so there is our image. Now, we want to create another clone. Run ACDNR again on the brightest portions, yet again. We don't need to create a convolution mask for this because it's not that important. Basically what we want to do... Oh, didn't mean to do that. I meant to invert the mask. So now we're just affecting the nebula now. With this nebula selected, I like using a little bit of HDR, multi-scale. Hide our mask. And you can create so we have to be careful when we're doing this because we don't want to over sharpen like that. Here, let's create a little preview actually. Put on 7, so that was 6. Oh wait, shit. There we go. I forgot. We're not doing a preview. Now we're doing a preview. Let's do 7. Looks pretty okay. Let's move it up to 8. That just does the exact opposite. See what happens if we turn on median transform. That looks pretty okay. It's keeping our inner detail, which I like. I think we'll keep that. I think that's a keeper. What this does is it does allow for the inside of the nebula to be less bright, which helps to increase detail, which I think I did for my actual image. Yeah. You can see it looks like the inside of the nebula is more, well, it's like similar brightness to the outside, which isn't the case at all. It's very bright. But really, when you're in terms of these images, it's all just up to you. I like having a good spread of brightness throughout the image that isn't too, I don't know the right word for it, but it just isn't too overwhelming. I don't like having like, especially for Planetary Nebula, I do not like having a super bright inside, or like a bright shell, and then like the outer core. It's just not something I've been up to or used to. There we go. Delete. And then huzzah, that looks pretty okay. Actually, we do need to apply the mask again. Oh, okay. Let's up saturation a little bit. Actually, let's up the reds. I think they're kind of lacking, honestly. And then let's get a little rid of the greens a little bit. So a little bit of blue in there. There we go. Looks pretty sweet. I don't want to make it too purple. It looks pretty good. Alright, then let's add a little bit of noise X. 40%. Nothing big. Didn't change too much, really. Yeah, might need to just increase it just a little bit. There we go. And that doesn't really decrease detail at all, so I think that's a good little point measurement. Let's change that. There we go. I'll click on that in a minute. Okay. So now that that's good. What else should we do here? I want to get rid of the green up here. Let's see if we can do that real quick. Alright. That looks pretty sweet. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a little bit of sharpening to this using multi-scale linear transform. Oh, I realized what I did wrong. Forgot to invert the mask. So I don't want to sharpen the background because there's nothing to sharpen. On the inside there is. And that just adds a little bit of niceness to it. And then what we are going to do is we're just going to affect the greens a little bit. There we go. Okay, sorry for all this clutter. So, now we can apply our stars back. But we can't just add them back in because that will make it a little difficult. Here, let's make our background just a little blacker. There we go. Not outright clipping anything. Still looks pretty good. Okay, and then process. Now instead of actually using a process, what we're going to be doing is using a script. Our script is going to be called Utilities. Image Blend. I love image blending because it reminds me of Photoshop a lot. We did an image 14, right? Yep. Image 14 stars. So this can look good. The problem is that our stars are too bright, which we don't want. Actually, I think that's close to what I need. I need this central star to be just a little brighter, though. Can't have that. I like color dodge a little bit more. Fortunately, our central star does get a little lost. But I think we can do because I think that looks pretty okay. Because there it is, our bright inner star. You can see it's pretty dim out there. Don't think there's a way to brighten it necessarily. Unless there's a mask that I can create. Nah. So unfortunately, it wasn't like last time where I did Star X a little later. in the process, it is going to have to be staying like that. Alright, so let's crop. Actually, let's get rid of some of that noise. There we go. And I do want to get rid of that green. I don't know. I don't like it. There we go. I think that looks a little better. Okay. So now we can dynamically crop. Yes. Okay. There you go. There's our final Pixinsight image. This was a quicker edit than my previous one, though, I will say. So, it did not turn out as good as my first image, my personal opinion, because in my final image here, the bright star is a lot better than this. So I think we could have done a little bit better, but that's just what happens when you redo things. You think things a little differently each time. I do like the HDR on this one. I like how dynamic it feels and how crunchy it is. But yeah, that's how I would edit in both ways. I think it's pretty good. So here's a final side-by-side of all three of my results. I hope you guys enjoyed.